Imagine standing at the edge of a vast ocean, watching the waves roll in and out with perfect rhythm. Some waves are gentle, others powerful, yet the ocean never fights them, never tries to hold them back. Now imagine if you could relate to your emotions the same way, allowing them to rise, acknowledging their presence, and letting them pass without drowning in them. What if instead of being trapped by your feelings, you could move through them with the grace and fluidity of water? Today, you're about to discover how to develop emotional agility, the life-changing skill that transforms how you experience every feeling that flows through you. Before we begin, friends, please consider subscribing to this channel and liking the video. It will help me a lot. You might not think so, but it means the world to me. Emotional Agility Training. Chapter 1. The Prison of Emotional Rigidity. Sarah sat in her car, hands gripping the steering wheel, unable to turn the key. She'd been sitting there for 20 minutes, frozen by a wave of anxiety that crashed over her the moment she thought about walking into her office. This wasn't the first time. For months, she'd been caught in an exhausting cycle, feeling anxious, trying desperately to push the anxiety away, only to feel more anxious about being anxious. She was stuck, trapped in what felt like an emotional prison with no way out. Sarah's story is more common than you might think. Millions of people around the world wake up each day feeling emotionally stuck, caught in patterns that drain their energy and dim their light. But here's the truth that changes everything. The problem isn't the emotions themselves. The problem is how we relate to them. Welcome to your journey toward emotional agility, a transformative approach that will teach you not just to survive your emotions, but to dance with them, to move through them with confidence and grace. This isn't about becoming emotionless or developing a thick skin. It's about developing the psychological flexibility to acknowledge what you feel, understand what it's telling you, and choose how you respond, all while staying aligned with what truly matters to you. Think about the last time you felt overwhelmed by an emotion. Maybe it was anger that erupted suddenly during a conversation. Perhaps it was sadness that settled over you, like a heavy blanket, making it hard to get out of bed, or anxiety that kept you awake at night, replaying scenarios in your mind. In those moments, you probably did one of two things. You either tried to push the feeling away, denying its existence, or you became completely consumed by it, letting it dictate your every move. Both responses represent emotional rigidity, getting stuck in one pattern of relating to your feelings. When you're emotionally rigid, you're like a tree that refuses to bend in the wind. You might stand strong for a while, but eventually, the storm becomes too much, and you break. Emotional agility, on the other hand, makes you like bamboo, flexible enough to bend without breaking, strong enough to stand tall once the storm passes. Research from Harvard Medical School psychologist Susan David has shown that emotional agility isn't just a nice concept. It's a measurable skill that predicts success in virtually every area of life. People with high emotional agility experience better mental health, stronger relationships, greater career success, and more fulfilling lives. They don't have fewer difficult emotions. They simply know how to navigate them without getting lost. The journey you're about to embark on draws from decades of psychological research, particularly from acceptance and commitment therapy, which has been proven effective in over 300 clinical trials. You'll learn practical techniques that neuroscientists have shown actually change the structure of your brain, creating new neural pathways that make emotional flexibility your default response rather than an exhausting effort. But before we dive into the how, let's understand the why. Why do we get stuck emotionally in the first place? Your brain is an incredible prediction machine, constantly trying to keep you safe. When it encounters a potential threat, whether that's physical danger or social embarrassment, it triggers emotional responses designed to protect you. Fear tells you to be careful. Anger prepares you to defend yourself. Sadness signals that something important has been lost. These emotions aren't your enemies. They're information. The problem arises when your brain's threat detection system becomes too sensitive, triggering alarm bells for situations that don't actually require such intense responses. That presentation at work isn't a life or death situation, but your racing heart doesn't know the difference. Your friend's delayed text message isn't evidence of rejection, but your anxious thoughts spin elaborate stories anyway. Over time, many of us develop what psychologists call emotional hooks, patterns where certain triggers automatically pull us into emotional reactions that don't serve us. You get hooked by the thought, "I'm not good enough," and suddenly you're spiraling into self-doubt. You get hooked by the feeling of discomfort, and you immediately reach for distraction, scrolling through social media, binge-watching shows, or overworking to avoid what you're feeling. These hooks are reinforced every time you respond to them in the same way. Your brain learns, when this happens, we do this. The neural pathways strengthen, and the pattern becomes automatic. You're not weak or broken. You're simply dealing with a brain that has learned certain responses and keeps repeating them. The beautiful truth is this: just as these patterns were learned, they can be unlearned. You can develop new responses, create new pathways, and build the skill of emotional agility. It starts with understanding that you are not your thoughts, you are not your emotions, and you are certainly not defined by the stories your mind tells about who you are. Chapter 2: The Science of Psychological Flexibility. Let's talk about what emotional agility really means from a scientific perspective. At its core, emotional agility is built on a foundation called psychological flexibility, your ability to be present with your thoughts and feelings while still taking action aligned with your values. Imagine your mind as a vast sky. Thoughts and emotions are like clouds that drift across it, some light and fluffy, others dark and stormy. When you lack psychological flexibility, you either become consumed by every cloud that passes, fusion, or you spend all your energy trying to push the clouds away, avoidance. Both strategies are exhausting and ultimately ineffective. Psychological flexibility means being the sky itself, vast, open, and unchanging, regardless of what clouds pass through. The clouds come and go, but the sky remains. You observe your thoughts and feelings without becoming them, without fighting them, and without letting them control your choices. Research has identified 6 core processes that work together to create psychological flexibility. Each one is like a pillar supporting your emotional well-being, and strengthening all 6 transforms how you experience life. The first pillar is cognitive diffusion, learning to see your thoughts as thoughts rather than truths. Right now, notice any thought in your mind. Maybe it's, "This is interesting," or "I wonder if this will work," or even, "I'm not sure about this." Now recognize that you're having that thought. It's not reality. It's your mind's interpretation of reality. That simple shift, from being absorbed in your thoughts to noticing them, is the beginning of freedom. Your mind generates thousands of thoughts every day, most of them repetitive and many of them unhelpful. "I'm going to fail." "They don't like me." "I can't handle this." When you fuse with these thoughts, believing them absolutely, they control your behavior. But when you diffuse from them, recognizing them as mental events rather than facts, their power diminishes. Think of it like watching a movie. When you're completely absorbed in the story, you feel every emotion as if it's happening to you. Your heart races during action scenes. You cry during sad moments. But if someone pauses the movie and turns on the lights, suddenly you remember, "Oh right, this is just a film. Those are actors. This isn't real." That's cognitive diffusion, creating distance between you and your thoughts so you can choose how to respond. The second pillar is acceptance, making room for uncomfortable feelings rather than fighting them. This might sound counterintuitive. Why would you want to accept anxiety, sadness, or anger? Shouldn't you try to get rid of negative emotions? Here's the paradox. The more you struggle against your emotions, the stronger they become. It's like being caught in quicksand. The more you thrash around trying to escape, the deeper you sink. Acceptance doesn't mean you like the feeling or want it to stay. It means you stop wasting energy fighting reality. Studies have shown that people who practice acceptance of their emotions experience those emotions less intensely and for shorter durations. When you stop resisting, the emotion can run its natural course and move through you. It's like swimming in the ocean. If you fight against a wave, it can knock you down. But if you dive through it or let it carry you, you emerge on the other side. The third pillar is being present, contacting the moment fully and bringing your attention to what's happening right now. Most emotional suffering doesn't come from the present moment. It comes from ruminating about the past or worrying about the future. Your mind is an incredible time travel machine, constantly pulling you into yesterday's regrets or tomorrow's anxieties. Why did I say that 3 years ago? What if something bad happens next month? Meanwhile, this moment, the only moment you actually have, passes by unnoticed. Present moment awareness doesn't mean ignoring the past or failing to plan for the future. It means recognizing when your mind has drifted and gently bringing your attention back to now. In this moment, right now, reading these words, you are okay. Your heart is beating. Your lungs are breathing. You are alive. Most of our suffering exists in the stories we tell about moments that aren't actually happening. The fourth pillar is self as context, recognizing that you are the space in which experiences happen, not the experiences themselves. You are not your anxiety. You are the person noticing anxiety. You are not your angry thoughts. You are the awareness observing those thoughts. This perspective shift is profound. When you identify completely with your emotions, I am anxious, I am depressed, you become trapped in that identity. But when you step back and recognize yourself as the observer, I'm noticing anxiety, I'm experiencing sadness, you create space for change. Think of yourself as a vast container that can hold any experience. No single thought or emotion defines you. You've felt countless different ways throughout your life, yet underneath all those changing experiences, there's a continuous sense of you that remains. That's the self as context, the observer who has been present for every moment of your life. The fifth pillar is values clarity, knowing what truly matters to you and what you want your life to stand for. Values are like a compass, giving you direction even when the path is unclear. They're not goals you achieve. They're qualities of action you can express in any moment. Many people spend their lives pursuing what they think they should want: the career, the relationship, the achievements that society says matter, only to reach them and feel empty. That's because they were climbing someone else's ladder. Values help you identify your own ladder and ensure every step you take is meaningful. What do you want to be known for? How do you want to treat the people you love? What kind of person do you want to be when facing challenges? These questions point toward your values. When your actions align with your values, even difficult tasks feel meaningful. When they don't align, even easy tasks feel hollow. The sixth pillar is committed action, taking effective action guided by your values, even in the presence of difficult thoughts and feelings. This is where all the other pillars come together into real change. You can defuse from unhelpful thoughts, accept uncomfortable feelings, stay present, recognize your observer self, and know your values. But none of it matters unless you act. Committed action means doing what needs to be done to create the life you want, whether you feel like it or not. Think about the last time you did something meaningful, despite feeling anxious or uncomfortable. Maybe you had a difficult conversation, started a new project, or reached out to someone even though you felt scared. That's committed action, letting your values guide you rather than your feelings. These six pillars work together synergistically. The more you practice each one, the more naturally emotional agility flows through your life. You become less reactive and more responsive, less stuck and more fluid, less controlled by your internal experience, and more guided by your deepest values. Chapter 3. Emotional Granularity, the Art of Precise Feeling. Let me ask you a question. How do you feel right now? Take a moment before you answer. Did you say fine or okay or good? If so, you're like most people, using broad, vague terms that barely scratch the surface of your actual emotional experience. This lack of precision in identifying emotions is one of the biggest barriers to emotional agility. Emotional granularity is your ability to make fine-grained distinctions between emotions. It's the difference between feeling bad and recognizing that you're specifically feeling disappointed or frustrated or overwhelmed, or a combination of several distinct feelings. The more granular your emotional awareness, the better equipped you are to respond effectively. Research by Lisa Feldman, Barrett, and others has shown that people with high emotional granularity experience better mental health outcomes. They're less likely to engage in harmful coping behaviors, more resilient in the face of stress, and better at regulating their emotions. Why? Because precise emotional labels lead to more targeted solutions. Think about it like going to a doctor. If you say, "I feel bad," the doctor can't help you effectively. But if you say, "I have sharp pain in my lower right abdomen, occasional nausea, and a fever," they can diagnose appendicitis and treat it appropriately. Emotions work the same way. When you recognize that you're not just stressed, but specifically feeling worried about a presentation, resentful about taking on too much work, and lonely because you haven't connected with friends in weeks, you can address each element. You can prepare for the presentation, set boundaries about your workload, and schedule time with friends. But if you just know you're stressed, you're left flailing, not knowing where to start. Most people operate with a very limited emotional vocabulary. They recognize perhaps a dozen emotions: happy, sad, angry, afraid, excited, bored, stressed, anxious, depressed, frustrated, and maybe a few others. But the human emotional experience is far richer than this. There are hundreds of words that describe nuanced emotional states: nostalgic, wistful, melancholic, forlorn, despondent, dejected. All variations of sadness, but each with its own flavor and implications. Irritated, aggravated, exasperated, indignant, furious, all forms of anger, but each suggesting different triggers and appropriate responses. Developing emotional granularity is like training your palate for wine or coffee. At first, you might only taste good or bad, bitter or sweet. But as you pay attention and learn more distinctions, you start noticing subtle notes, hints of chocolate, traces of citrus, undertones of caramel. The experience becomes richer, and you develop preferences based on nuance rather than broad categories. Here's a powerful practice for developing emotional granularity. Throughout your day, pause regularly and ask yourself, what exactly am I feeling right now? Then challenge yourself to go beyond the first word that comes to mind. If you think anxious, ask yourself what flavor of anxious. Is it worried anxious about a specific outcome? Jittery anxious from too much caffeine? Anticipatory anxious before something exciting? Dread anxious about something you're avoiding? You might notice that you're rarely feeling just one emotion. Most of the time, we experience emotional blends, multiple feelings happening simultaneously. You might feel proud of an accomplishment while also feeling anxious about maintaining that standard. You might feel angry at someone's behavior while also feeling sad about the relationship deteriorating. You might feel excited about a new opportunity, while also feeling nervous about the unknown. Acknowledging these emotional blends gives you a more complete picture of your internal experience. It also helps you understand seemingly contradictory feelings. Why do I feel unhappy when I just achieved what I wanted? Because achievement often comes with its own challenges: pressure to perform, fear of losing what you've gained, or even grieving the loss of the striving that gave your life structure. The brain science behind emotional granularity is fascinating. Your brain doesn't have dedicated circuits for specific emotions. Instead, it constructs emotional experiences based on past learning, present sensations, and contextual cues. The concepts you have, the words and categories you know, actually shape the emotions you experience. People who speak languages with more emotion. Words literally experience more distinct emotions. If your language has 5 words for different types of love, you'll experience those distinctions. If it has 1 word for love, your experience will be less differentiated. This means that learning new emotion words actually expands your emotional capacity. Let's expand your emotional vocabulary right now. Consider these nuanced emotions. Frustration, family. Agitated, annoyed, bothered, exasperated, impatient, irritated, nettled, peeved, riled, vexed. Anxiety family. Apprehensive, concerned, distressed, fretful, nervous, on edge, rattled, tense, uneasy, worried. Sadness family. Dejected, despondent, disheartened, downcast, gloomy, grieving, heartbroken, melancholic, mournful, sorrowful. Joy family. Amused, cheerful, content, delighted, ecstatic, elated, glad, gleeful, jubilant, pleased. Notice how each word carries slightly different energy and suggests different contexts. Being annoyed feels different from being exasperated, even though both belong to the frustration family. This precision matters because it guides your response. If you're annoyed, you might need a brief break or a minor adjustment. If you're exasperated, you might need to address a pattern that's been building over time. If you're vexed, there might be a specific obstacle that needs removing. Same general category, different specific actions. Here's another crucial aspect of emotional granularity: distinguishing between emotions and the stories about emotions. You might feel hurt, and then your mind creates a story. This always happens to me. People always let me down. I'll never have the relationship I want. Now, you're not just feeling hurt. You're feeling hopeless, victimized, and stuck. When you develop granularity, you learn to separate the primary emotion from the secondary reactions. I'm feeling hurt about this specific situation is very different from I'm someone who gets hurt because I'm fundamentally unlovable. The first is an emotion passing through you. The second is an identity you're cementing. Emotional granularity also helps you identify mixed messages. Your mind might be saying, I'm terrified, but your body might be showing excitement. Your thoughts might insist, I'm fine, but your sensations might reveal tension and discomfort. Learning to read all these signals with precision gives you a fuller picture of your actual state. Think of emotions as data rather than directives. They're giving you information about how your brain and body are interpreting your current situation, but that interpretation might be based on outdated programming. The anxious feeling before a presentation isn't necessarily telling you you're in danger. It might be energy you can channel into engaged performance. The sadness after achieving a goal isn't necessarily depression. It might be signaling that you need a new direction now that this chapter is complete. Developing emotional granularity is an ongoing practice, not a destination you reach. Even people with highly developed emotional awareness continue learning new distinctions and deepening their understanding. But every increment of improvement gives you more information to work with and more tools for responding effectively. Start simple. Pick 3 emotions you experience frequently and commit to finding more precise words for them over the next week. When you notice anxious, pause and identify what specific flavor of anxious. When you feel happy, determine what specific quality of happiness. When you're upset, discover what particular form that upset is taking. Keep an emotion journal where you practice this precision. Write not just, "I felt sad today," but "I felt a gentle melancholy tinged with nostalgia when I drove past my childhood home, followed by a sharper pang of grief when I remembered my grandmother, softening into a warm sadness mixed with gratitude as I recalled specific memories." This level of detail might feel unnecessary at first, but it's building a crucial skill. You're training your brain to make finer distinctions, and those distinctions will become automatic over time. Eventually, you won't have to deliberately analyze your emotions. You'll simply know with greater precision what you're feeling, and that knowing will guide you toward more effective responses. Chapter 4. Diffusing from your thoughts. Close your eyes for a moment and notice a thought that appears in your mind. Any thought at all. Got one? Good. Now recognize something remarkable. You just observed a thought. You weren't the thought itself. You were the awareness, noticing the thought. That distance, that gap between the observer and the observed, is the essence of cognitive diffusion. Most of us spend our lives completely fused with our thoughts. When a thought appears, "I'm going to fail," "They're judging me," "I can't do this," we believe it instantly, completely, without question. The thought and truth become indistinguishable. This fusion gives our thoughts tremendous power over our behavior. Cognitive diffusion doesn't mean getting rid of thoughts or pretending they don't exist. It means changing your relationship with thoughts so they have less control over you. You learn to notice thoughts without necessarily believing them, to observe them without being consumed by them. Here's a simple but powerful diffusion technique. Take any thought that bothers you. Let's say, "I'm not good enough." Instead of just thinking it, say to yourself, "I'm having the thought that I'm not good enough." Notice what changes. The thought is still there, but you've created a small space between you and it. You're not claiming it's true. You're simply noting that your mind produced this thought. Now take it one step further. I notice I'm having the thought that I'm not good enough. Even more distance. And one more. I notice my mind is telling me the story that I'm not good enough. Now you've created significant separation. It's not you. It's not truth. It's a story your mind is telling. This might seem like a small linguistic shift, but neuroscience shows it has real effects. When you observe your thoughts, rather than being absorbed in them, different brain regions activate. The regions associated with self-reflection and metacognition light up, while the regions associated with threat and stress calm down. You're literally rewiring your brain's response to difficult thoughts. Another powerful diffusion technique is to thank your mind for the thought. When an anxious thought appears, "What if everything goes wrong?" You can say internally, "Thanks, mind, for trying to protect me by preparing for worst-case scenarios." This acknowledges the thought's intention, usually to keep you safe, while not treating it as an accurate prediction of the future. You can also name the story your mind is playing. Many of us have recurring thought patterns that show up repeatedly. You might have the "I'm inadequate" story, the "everyone's going to reject me" story, the "nothing ever works out" story, or the "I'm too damaged to be happy" story. These stories have familiar plot lines and predictable endings. When you notice your mind spinning one of these familiar tales, you can simply name it. "Ah, there's the inadequacy story again." Or, "Hello, rejection story. I see you've shown up." This labeling creates distance. Instead of being caught up in the drama of the story, You recognize it as just another production by your mind's overactive storytelling department. Here's a creative diffusion technique that might seem silly, but is remarkably effective. Say the thought in a funny voice. Take that serious, heavy thought, "I'm going to fail," and repeat it in the voice of a cartoon character. Mickey Mouse, Donald Duck, or your favorite character. The thought is still there, but its emotional charge has changed. You've demonstrated that it's not an unchangeable truth. It's malleable content you can play with. You can also sing your thoughts. Take any worrying thought and sing it to the tune of Happy Birthday or any familiar song. I'm terrified of public speaking. I'm terrified of public speaking. I'm terrified of public speaking, and everyone will judge me. The absurdity of the exercise helps you see the thought for what it is, words strung together, rather than some profound truth about reality. Another technique involves visualizing thoughts as external objects. Imagine your worries as leaves floating down a stream. As each thought appears, place it on a leaf and watch it drift away. Or picture them as clouds passing through the sky, or cars driving by on a highway. The key is to practice seeing thoughts as transient events in your awareness, rather than permanent fixtures of your identity. You can also write thoughts down and manipulate them physically. Write an anxious thought on paper, then fold the paper into an airplane and fly it across the room. Or write a self-critical thought, then tear the paper into tiny pieces. These physical acts reinforce the mental truth that thoughts are changeable, movable, and ultimately not as solid as they seem. One particularly powerful diffusion technique involves examining the thought with curiosity rather than fear. When a difficult thought appears, instead of running from it or fighting it, get curious. Interesting. Where did that thought come from? What triggered it? What's it trying to accomplish? If this thought was a person, what would it look like? What would it sound like? This investigative approach shifts you from victim to scientist. You're no longer being attacked by your thoughts. You're studying fascinating phenomena of the human mind. This shift in perspective dramatically reduces the emotional charge of difficult thoughts. Here's another angle on diffusion. Recognizing thoughts as historical artifacts rather than current realities. That thought, "I'm unlovable," might have been formed when you were 7 years old and felt rejected by a classmate. It's not actually about your present reality. It's an old program running on autopilot. When you recognize this, the thought loses its grip. It's not revealing truth about who you are now. It's echoing pain from who you were then. The goal of all these techniques isn't to never have difficult thoughts. That's impossible. Your mind will keep generating thousands of thoughts daily, many of them unhelpful. The goal is to change your relationship with those thoughts so they don't control your behavior. Think about it like this. You can't control the weather, but you can choose what to do in any weather. If it's raining, you don't have to cancel your plans. You can grab an umbrella. Similarly, you can't always control what thoughts appear in your mind, but you can choose how to respond when they do. A crucial point about diffusion: you don't have to diffuse from every thought. Many thoughts are useful, accurate, and helpful. "I should call my friend" is a thought worth acting on. "I need to eat something" is valuable information. "That sunset is beautiful" is a thought to savor. Diffusion is specifically for thoughts that hook you, thoughts that pull you into unproductive patterns, make you act against your values, or keep you stuck. Learn to recognize which thoughts need diffusing and which thoughts are genuinely helpful guidance. As you practice these techniques, you'll notice something remarkable. You'll catch yourself in the midst of fusion earlier and earlier. Instead of being caught up in anxious thoughts for hours before noticing, you'll catch it in minutes. Eventually, you'll notice the moment a problematic thought appears and diffuse from it almost automatically. This is the power of deliberate practice. Every time you use a diffusion technique, you're strengthening neural pathways that support psychological flexibility. You're teaching your brain a new way of relating to mental content. Over time, this new way becomes more natural than the old fusion pattern. Remember, diffusion isn't about controlling your thoughts or making negative thoughts go away. It's about freeing yourself from the tyranny of thoughts that pretend to be truth. Your thoughts are not facts. They're mental events. Some are useful, some are not, but none of them define you. Chapter 5. Acceptance. Making space for what? Let's address a common misconception head on. Acceptance does not mean resignation, passivity, or giving up. Acceptance is actually an active process of making room for your experience without fighting it. It's one of the most powerful and misunderstood components of emotional agility. Think about the last time you tried really hard not to think about something. Maybe you told yourself, "Don't think about pink elephants." What happened? Your mind immediately conjured images of pink elephants. The harder you try to suppress a thought or feeling, the more it persists. This is called the rebound effect, and it's been demonstrated in countless psychological studies. The same principle applies to emotions. When you fight your anxiety, you often become anxious about being anxious. When you resist your sadness, you add frustration and self-judgment to the sadness. When you try to force yourself to feel differently, you create an inner war that's exhausting and ultimately futile. Acceptance offers a different approach. Stop fighting reality, not because you like it or want it to stay, but because fighting what already exists is a waste of energy that could be spent on creating change. It's the difference between swimming against a current and swimming with it toward a place where you can get to shore. Let me share a metaphor that illustrates this beautifully. Imagine you're hosting a party, the party of your life. Various guests show up representing different emotions, thoughts, and experiences. Joy arrives, and you welcome her enthusiastically. Contentment shows up, and you're happy to see him. But then anxiety knocks on the door. You don't want to let her in, so you try to bar the door. But anxiety is persistent and loud, and you have to use all your energy keeping her out. Meanwhile, inside the party, you're distracted, stressed, unable to enjoy the guests you do want. You're spending your whole party fighting to keep one unwelcome guest outside. Acceptance means opening the door and saying, "Anxiety, I see you're here. I'm not thrilled about it, but come in if you must. Just know you don't get to run the party." Anxiety enters, finds a spot in the corner, and yes, she's there, but she's not controlling everything. You're still able to dance with joy, chat with contentment, and enjoy the party. By stopping the exhausting fight to keep anxiety out, you've freed up energy to actually live your life. This doesn't mean you have to like anxiety or pretend she's welcome. It means you recognize that trying to control whether she shows up isn't working. So, you're choosing a different strategy, making room for whatever guests arrive while still being the host of your own life. Acceptance involves several key skills. First is willingness, the readiness to experience whatever thoughts and feelings arise, even the uncomfortable ones. Willingness doesn't happen once and last forever. It's a moment-by-moment choice you make repeatedly. Yes, I'm willing to feel this discomfort as part of living a meaningful life. Think about physical pain for a moment. If you've ever had a medical procedure, you know that tensing up against the pain actually makes it worse. When you relax into it, breathe through it, and accept that it's temporarily part of your experience, it becomes more manageable. The same is true for emotional pain. Second is expansion, literally making space in your body for the sensations of emotion. Emotions are physical experiences. Anxiety might show up as tension in your chest and butterflies in your stomach. Sadness might manifest as heaviness and fatigue. Anger might create heat and pressure. Instead of trying to contract away from these sensations, you practice expansion, breathing into them, softening around them, allowing them to be there. You might visualize your torso as a vast space that can hold any sensation, no matter how intense. Here's a powerful expansion exercise. When you notice an uncomfortable emotion, stop what you're doing and get curious about it. Where exactly do you feel it in your body? What's the quality of the sensation? Sharp? Dull? Tight? Hot? Cold, pulsing, steady? Notice how it changes from moment to moment. Is it getting stronger? Weaker? Moving? Staying still? This curious investigation serves two purposes. First, it shifts you from victim to observer, which automatically reduces the emotional charge. Second, it reveals something surprising. Emotions are not static blocks of feeling. They're constantly shifting, changing, moving. The anxiety that felt like it would last forever actually peaks and subsides in waves, usually within minutes if you don't fuel it with resistance. Third is self-compassion, treating yourself with kindness when you're struggling rather than piling self-criticism on top of pain. Many people, when feeling anxious or sad, make themselves feel worse by judging themselves for having the feeling, "What's wrong with me? I shouldn't feel this way. I'm so weak." Self-compassion means speaking to yourself the way you would speak to a good friend who's struggling. You wouldn't tell them, "Just get over it," or "You're pathetic for feeling this way." You'd acknowledge that what they're going through is difficult, that it makes sense to struggle, and that you care about their pain. Research by Kristen Neff and others has shown that self-compassion is actually more effective than self-esteem for building resilience and well-being. Self-esteem often depends on comparing yourself to others and judging yourself as better or worse. Self-compassion recognizes that struggle is part of being human and treats yourself with kindness, regardless of how you measure up to arbitrary standards. A simple self-compassion practice. Place your hand on your heart when you're struggling. Feel the warmth of your own touch and say to yourself, "This is a moment of suffering. Suffering is part of life. May I be kind to myself in this moment. May I give myself the compassion I need." It might feel awkward at first, especially if you're used to being self-critical, but stick with it. You're retraining your brain's default response to struggle. Instead of adding judgment to pain, you're adding comfort. Fourth is values-based persistence, continuing to move toward what matters even when you feel uncomfortable. This is where acceptance becomes powerful for creating change. You're not just accepting discomfort for its own sake, you're accepting it as part of doing something that matters to you. If you value connection but feel anxious in social situations, acceptance means feeling the anxiety and showing up anyway. If you value creativity but feel vulnerable sharing your work, acceptance means experiencing the vulnerability and sharing anyway. The uncomfortable feeling becomes the admission price for a meaningful life, rather than an insurmountable barrier. Here's a truth that liberates. You don't have to feel confident to act. You don't have to feel ready. You don't have to feel like it. You can feel anxious and speak anyway. You can feel uncertain and start anyway. You can feel afraid and choose courage anyway. Acceptance gives you this freedom because you're no longer waiting for difficult feelings to disappear before you live your life. Many people have spent years or decades waiting to feel better before pursuing their dreams. Once I'm not anxious anymore, I'll apply for that job. Once I'm confident, I'll ask someone out. Once I feel ready, I'll start that project. The wait is endless because those feelings never permanently disappear. Acceptance means you stop waiting for permission from your emotions to live. A final crucial point about acceptance. It's not a one-time decision. You don't accept difficult emotions once and they never bother you again. Acceptance is a practice you return to again and again, sometimes multiple times in a single hour. You might accept anxiety in the morning, then find yourself fighting it in the afternoon, requiring you to consciously choose acceptance again. That's normal. Each time you choose acceptance, you're building the skill, strengthening the neural pathways, making it more automatic over time. Think of acceptance like learning to float in water. At first, you tense up and sink. Then you learn to relax, spread out, and trust the water to hold you. But even experienced swimmers sometimes tense up and have to consciously remind themselves to relax. Acceptance works the same way. It's a skill that improves with practice, but requires ongoing attention. The beauty of acceptance is that it ends the exhausting war with yourself. Instead of using all your energy fighting reality, judging yourself, or trying to force change, you can redirect that energy toward building the life you want. You become peaceful warriors, capable of handling difficulty with grace while still moving toward your values. Chapter 6. Living from your values. Imagine you're standing at a crossroads. One path leads toward temporary comfort, avoiding the difficult conversation, staying in the safe but unfulfilling job, scrolling through social media instead of working on your goals. The other path leads toward your values, having that honest talk, taking the career risk, investing in what truly matters. Both paths are available in every moment. Which one do you choose? Values are the compass that guides you through life's complexities. They're not goals you achieve or rules you follow. They're qualities of action, how you want to behave, how you want to treat yourself and others, what you want your life to stand for. Here's the distinction. A goal is getting married. A value is being a loving, committed partner. A goal is getting promoted. A value is contributing meaningfully through your work. A goal is running a marathon. A value is taking care of your physical health. Goals can be checked off. Values are directions you can always move toward. Why does this matter for emotional agility? Because values give difficult emotions context and meaning. When you're living according to your values, discomfort becomes purposeful rather than pointless. The anxiety before the important conversation makes sense because the conversation matters. The vulnerability of sharing your creative work has meaning because expressing yourself is important to you. Without clear values, emotions seem random and overwhelming. Anxiety becomes, "Why do I always feel this way?" instead of, "I'm feeling nervous because I'm about to do something that matters." Sadness becomes, "Something's wrong with me," instead of, "I'm grieving this loss because connection is one of my core values." Let's explore the major life domains where values operate. The first is relationships. How you want to show up in your connections with others. Do you value being supportive, honest, playful, reliable, generous, present? When you identify your relationship values, you have a guide for choosing actions even when you're feeling irritable, tired, or distant. Your friend calls when you're exhausted and just want to be alone. Without values clarity, you might feel resentful and answer the phone grudgingly, or ignore it and feel guilty. With values clarity, you check in with yourself. I value being a supportive friend. That doesn't mean I have to talk for hours right now, but I can answer, acknowledge what they're going through, and set a clear boundary about needing to talk another time. The second domain is personal growth, how you want to develop and evolve. Do you value curiosity, learning, challenge, skill development, self-awareness? These values guide how you respond to failure and difficulty. If you value growth, a mistake becomes valuable feedback rather than evidence of your inadequacy. The third domain is work and education. What you want your contributions to the world to reflect. Do you value creativity, helping others, excellence, innovation, integrity, impact? These values help you make career decisions and find meaning even in jobs that aren't ideal. You might be in a job that doesn't align perfectly with your values, but you can still express your values within that job. If you value helping others, you can be the colleague who supports new team members. If you value excellence, you can bring your best effort to even mundane tasks. Values aren't dependent on external circumstances. They're internal choices you make about how to be. The fourth domain is leisure and recreation, how you want to experience pleasure, relaxation, and fun. Do you value adventure, creativity, nature, social connection, solitude, physical activity? Modern life often treats leisure as an afterthought, but how you spend your free time shapes your well-being significantly. The fifth domain is health and well-being, how you want to care for your body and mind. Do you value vitality, balance, nourishment, movement, rest, prevention? These values guide daily choices about sleep, exercise, food, and stress management. The sixth domain is spirituality or life philosophy. What gives your life meaning beyond day-to-day concerns? This might involve religion, nature, art, contribution to humanity, personal ethics, or any framework that connects you to something larger than yourself. Now, here's the practice. For each domain that's relevant to your life, identify your core values. Not what you think you should value, not what others value, but what genuinely matters to you. This requires honest self-reflection. A helpful exercise is to imagine your 80th birthday party. People who know you well are there, celebrating your life. What do you hope they would say about who you've been and how you've lived? Not your achievements or accomplishments, but your character and how you treated people. Those qualities they describe are your values. Another approach is to think about times when you felt most alive and fulfilled. What were you doing? What qualities were you expressing? Those moments point toward your values. Once you've identified your values, the real work begins. Aligning your actions with them. This is where emotional agility becomes crucial. Living according to your values will often be uncomfortable. It will require courage, vulnerability, patience, and persistence. Your mind will generate countless reasons why you should avoid the discomfort and choose the easier path. This is where all the skills we've been building come together. You diffuse from the thought, "I can't do this." Accept the uncomfortable feelings that arise when you step toward your values. Stay present with the experience rather than getting lost in worry. Recognize yourself as more than your current emotional state and take committed action guided by what matters most. A powerful daily practice is the values check-in. At the start of each day, identify one or two values you want to express today. Then identify specific actions that would represent those values. If you value kindness, how could you express that today? If you value growth, what small step toward learning could you take? If you value presence, how can you be more fully engaged with whatever you're doing? At the end of each day, reflect on moments when you acted according to your values and moments when you didn't. Without judgment, this isn't about being perfect. Notice the patterns. When did you choose the values path? When did you choose the comfort path? What helped or hindered you? Here's something important. Your values can conflict. You might value both ambition and family time, both honesty and harmony, both adventure and security. When values conflict, you have to make choices about which one takes priority in specific situations. There's no right answer. There's only your answer, based on the context and what matters most in that moment. Values also evolve. What matters to you at 25 might differ from what matters at 45 or 65. Relationships might become more important. Career ambitions might shift. New values might emerge. This is healthy and natural. Regularly reassess whether your identified values still resonate with who you are and who you're becoming. One of the most profound shifts in emotional agility comes when you realize that you can choose values-based action regardless of how you feel. You don't have to feel motivated to act on your values. You don't have to feel brave to choose courage. You don't have to feel loving to express love. The action itself embodies the value. regardless of your emotional state in that moment. This is radically freeing because it means your emotions don't control your behavior. You're in the driver's seat with your values as your GPS. Sometimes the journey is pleasant, sometimes it's uncomfortable. But you know you're heading in the right directions because your choices reflect what truly matters to you. Chapter 7. Breaking Free from Rumination. Picture a hamster running on a wheel, expending tremendous energy, but going nowhere. That's rumination, and if you've ever found yourself stuck in repetitive thinking loops, you know how exhausting it is. Rumination is thinking about the same thing over and over without making progress toward a solution. It's the mental replay of embarrassing moments from 5 years ago. It's the endless what-if scenarios about things that might go wrong. It's the circular analysis of why you feel bad, which makes you feel worse, which you then analyze more. While rumination masquerades as problem-solving, it's actually a trap. Real problem-solving moves forward. You identify an issue, consider options, choose an action, and implement it. Rumination spins in place. You identify an issue, worry about it, imagine worst-case scenarios, criticize yourself, feel worse, and circle back to the beginning. Research shows that rumination significantly increases risk for depression and anxiety. People who ruminate are more likely to develop mental health problems and slower to recover from them. They experience more intense negative emotions that last longer. Rumination literally rewires your brain to be more sensitive to negative information and more likely to interpret ambiguous situations negatively. Why do we ruminate if it's so unhelpful? Because it feels like we're doing something. Our brain tricks us into believing that if we just think about the problem enough, we'll figure it out. But rumination isn't thinking. It's getting stuck in thinking. It's the difference between stirring a pot to mix ingredients and stirring endlessly without any purpose. Rumination often starts with a trigger. Something goes wrong. Someone says something hurtful. You make a mistake. Instead of processing the experience and moving on, you get hooked by it. Your attention keeps returning to it, like a tongue probing a sore tooth. There are two main types of rumination. The first is brooding, passive dwelling on problems and negative feelings. Why did this happen? Why do I always feel this way? What's wrong with me? These questions don't actually seek answers. They reinforce helplessness. The second type is analyzing, trying to figure everything out, often about things that can't be figured out. If I had said this instead of that, would it have turned out differently? What were they thinking when they did that? What does this mean about me? Both types share a common feature. They pull you out of the present moment and into an imaginary space where you're reliving the past or pre-living the future. Meanwhile, the only moment you can actually influence this one passes by ignored. Breaking free from rumination requires recognizing when you're caught in it. This takes practice because rumination feels important and productive in the moment. Here are the signs. You're thinking about the same thing repeatedly without taking action. You're asking why questions without seeking real answers. You're feeling progressively worse the more you think, and you're not generating new insights or solutions. Once you recognize rumination, the first step is to interrupt the pattern. This doesn't mean suppressing the thoughts or pretending they're not there. It means consciously shifting your attention to something else. A powerful interruption technique is the 5 senses check-in. Stop and notice 5 things you can see, 4 things you can touch, 3 things you can hear, 2 things you can smell, and 1 thing you can taste. This grounds you in the present moment and breaks the rumination loop. Physical movement is another effective interrupter. Stand up, stretch, take a walk, do jumping jacks, dance to a song. You're literally moving your body out of the stuck state, which helps move your mind out of it too. The next step is to transform rumination into productive problem solving. If the situation you're ruminating about is something you can actually address, create a concrete action plan. Write down the problem, brainstorm possible solutions, choose one to try, and set a specific time to implement it. Then give yourself permission to stop thinking about it until that time. If the situation isn't something you can control or change, the past, other people's opinions, uncertain futures, you need a different approach. This is where acceptance comes in. Acknowledge that your mind wants to solve this problem, because that's what minds do, but recognize that some things can't be solved by thinking. You can say to yourself, my mind is offering me these thoughts because it wants to protect me from future pain. That's its job. But ruminating about this isn't actually protecting me. It's causing suffering. I'm going to choose to redirect my attention to the present moment where I actually have power. Scheduled worry time can be surprisingly effective. Instead of trying to stop worrying altogether, designate a specific 15-minute period each day as worry time. When rumination starts at other times, tell yourself, I'll think about this during worry time, and redirect your attention. When worry time arrives, you can ruminate all you want. Often, you'll find you don't even want to by then. Another powerful approach is the worry decision tree. When you notice yourself ruminating, ask, is this something I can do something about? If yes, decide what action to take and when you'll take it. If no, is worrying about it helping in any way? If yes, which is rare, continue. If no, consciously choose to let it go and redirect your attention. Values can also help break rumination. When you catch yourself ruminating, ask, what do I value that I could be doing right now instead? Maybe you value connection. Call a friend. Maybe you value learning. Read something interesting. Maybe you value creativity. Work on a project. Rumination keeps you stuck. Values move you forward. Cognitive diffusion techniques work beautifully for rumination. When you notice repetitive thoughts, try labeling them. Here's the I'm not good enough story again, or this is the everything will go wrong worry pattern. This labeling creates distance and helps you see the thoughts as mental habits rather than important truths. Physical journaling can help discharge rumination. If your mind is spinning with worries or regrets, spend 10 minutes writing them all down without censoring or organizing. Just let them flow onto paper. Often, once you've externalized the thoughts, they lose their grip. You might even look at what you wrote and realize how many of those worries are unlikely or based on assumptions rather than facts. Self-compassion is crucial for breaking rumination. Rumination often has a harsh, critical tone. You're not just thinking about what happened, you're berating yourself about it. Interrupt this by placing your hand on your heart and speaking to yourself with kindness. This is hard. I'm doing my best. These thoughts are painful, but they're just thoughts. Here's a profound realization. Rumination tries to prevent future pain by obsessively reviewing past pain or imagining future pain. It's your brain's misguided attempt at protection. Thank it for trying to help, but recognize that this strategy doesn't actually work. The best protection comes from being present, flexible, and responsive to what's actually happening now. As you practice catching and redirecting rumination, you'll notice it loses its grip gradually. The loops will get shorter. You'll catch yourself sooner. And eventually, your default response to triggers will shift from rumination to presence, from spinning to responding, from stuck to fluid. Chapter 8. The Practice of Committed Action. Everything we've explored, diffusion, acceptance, present moment awareness, values clarity, emotional granularity, comes together in this final piece. Committed action. This is where emotional agility transforms from theory into lived experience, from understanding into results. Committed action means doing what needs to be done to move toward your values, regardless of what thoughts and feelings show up. It's the bridge between intention and reality, between who you want to be and who you actually are in your daily choices. Here's the challenging truth. Insight alone doesn't create change. You can understand every principle in this audiobook perfectly and still be stuck if you don't take action. Knowledge is the map, but action is the journey. You have to actually walk the path. Many people wait for the right feeling before taking action. They wait to feel confident before speaking up, to feel motivated before starting a project, to feel ready before making a change. But here's what emotionally agile people understand. Action often creates feeling, not the other way around. You don't have to feel confident to act confidently. Act confidently. Stand tall, speak clearly, make eye contact, and the feeling of confidence often follows. You don't have to feel motivated to start, and motivation emerges from engagement. The feeling you're waiting for is often on the other side of the action, not the prerequisite for it. Committed action begins with setting values-based goals. These aren't just any goals. They're specific, achievable steps that move you toward your values. If you value health, a values-based goal might be walking for 20 minutes, 3 times this week. If you value connection, it might be having one meaningful conversation with someone you care about. If you value growth, it might be spending 30 minutes learning something new. Make your goals specific enough that you'll know whether you did them. Be healthier is too vague. Eat 2 servings of vegetables with dinner tonight is specific. Be more social is fuzzy. Text 3 friends this week to check in is clear. Make your goals achievable. Don't set yourself up for failure by choosing goals that require massive change immediately. Small, consistent steps build momentum better than giant leaps that can't be sustained. If you haven't exercised in months, don't commit to going to the gym every day. Commit to 3 15-minute walks this week. Success builds confidence. Repeated failure builds discouragement. Make your goals values connected. You should be able to answer, which of my values does this goal serve? When goals connect to values, you have intrinsic motivation. You're not forcing yourself to do something because you should. You're choosing it because it matters to you. Now comes the crucial part, anticipating barriers. What will try to stop you from taking this action? External barriers might include lack of time, money, access, or opportunity. Internal barriers might include anxiety, fatigue, self-doubt, or competing desires. For each anticipated barrier, create an if-then plan. If I feel too tired to exercise after work, then I'll do it first thing in the morning. If I get anxious about making that phone call, then I'll remind myself that I'm choosing courage and dial before I can talk myself out of it. If Netflix beckons when I should be working, then I'll put my phone in another room and use a website blocker. These implementation intentions dramatically increase follow-through. Your brain likes having a predetermined response to challenges rather than having to make a willpower-intensive decision in the moment. Set a specific time for your committed action. I'll exercise sometime this week. Rarely happens. I'll walk for 20 minutes on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday at 7 a.m. creates accountability. Your calendar is a commitment device. Use it. Track your progress. Assumes this doesn't have to be elaborate. A simple checkmark on a calendar, a note in your phone, or a tally on paper works. Tracking serves 2 purposes. It gives you accurate data about what you're actually doing, which is often different from what you think you're doing. And it creates a satisfying sense of accomplishment. When you follow through on a committed action, especially when it was difficult, acknowledge it. You don't have to make a big deal of it, but notice, I did that. I chose my values over my comfort. That's emotional agility in action. This positive reinforcement strengthens the behavior. When you don't follow through, and you won't always, respond with curious compassion rather than harsh criticism. I didn't do what I said I would. What got in the way? What can I learn from this? What would help me succeed next time? This learning stance helps you improve. Self-criticism just makes you want to give up. A powerful practice is the Values Action Gap Assessment. Regularly, maybe once a week, review your core values and honestly assess. On a scale of 1 to 10, how well are my recent actions aligning with this value? If you notice a large gap, that's valuable information. It's telling you where you need to focus your committed action. You might discover that you say you value health, but your actions show you prioritizing work above everything else. That's not a judgment, it's data. Now you can choose. Either adjust your actions to match your stated values, or acknowledge that right now, work is actually your higher priority and adjust your values list accordingly. Sometimes committed action means doing things that scare you. This is where courage enters, not the absence of fear, but acting despite fear. Every time you choose values-driven action in the presence of anxiety, you expand your window of tolerance. You teach your nervous system, we can handle more than we thought. Start with small courageous acts and build up. If social anxiety is your challenge, you don't have to throw a party tomorrow. Start by making eye contact and smiling at a cashier. Then progress to a brief conversation with a neighbor. Build gradually toward larger challenges. Each small success builds confidence and capacity. Sometimes committed action means doing less, not more. If you value rest and you're chronically overextended, your committed action might be saying no to a request, leaving work on time, or taking a day off without guilt. Our culture often equates action time with doing more, but sometimes the most powerful action is creating space. Sometimes committed action means staying with something difficult rather than escaping. If you tend to avoid conflict and you value authenticity in relationships, your committed action might be staying in a difficult conversation rather than shutting down or walking away. It might be sitting with uncomfortable feelings rather than numbing them with distraction. Create an environment that supports committed action. If you want to read more, put books in visible places and your phone in a drawer. If you want to eat healthier, stock your kitchen with nutritious foods and don't buy the junk. If you want to exercise, lay out your workout clothes the night before. Make the valued behavior easier and the competing behavior harder. Find accountability partners if that helps you. Tell someone what you're committed to doing and ask them to check in with you. Join a group working towards similar goals. Social accountability can bridge the gap between intention and action when internal motivation flags. Celebrate progress, not just completion. The goal isn't perfection, it's direction. If you take even one step toward your values today, that's worth acknowledging. You're building a life, not checking off a to-do list. The accumulation of small, consistent, values-aligned actions is what creates a meaningful life. Remember why you're doing this. When committed action feels hard, reconnect with your values. Why does this matter? What's the bigger purpose? That connection to meaning provides fuel when motivation runs low. And finally, be willing to fail. Some committed actions won't work out. Some goals will prove unrealistic. Some situations will overwhelm your capacity in the moment. That's okay. Failure is feedback. Adjust and try again. Emotional agility includes flexibility, the ability to shift your approach when one path isn't working. The beauty of committed action is that each time you choose it, you're not just achieving a specific goal. You're building your capacity for emotional agility. You're proving to yourself that you can feel uncomfortable and act anyway, that you can have doubts and persist anyway, that you can be imperfect and still be moving forward. Over time, committed action becomes more natural. The gap between intention and behavior shrinks. You become someone who, more often than not, does what they say they value. And that alignment between values and actions is the source of deep fulfillment and authentic confidence. Conclusion: your emotionally agile life. We've covered a lot of ground together, from understanding emotional rigidity to developing flexibility across multiple dimensions. You've learned about psychological flexibility's 6 pillars: emotional granularity, cognitive diffusion, acceptance, values clarity, and committed action. But information alone won't change your life. Application will. Think of emotional agility as a practice, not a destination. You're not trying to achieve perfect emotional control or eliminate difficult feelings. You're developing the capacity to move through your emotional experiences with more grace, more wisdom, more alignment with what matters most. Some days, you'll catch yourself in fusion and diffuse quickly. Other days, you'll be swept away by emotion and only realize it hours later. Both are part of the process. The trajectory is what matters. The overall direction of growth, not perfection in every moment. Remember Sarah from the beginning of this journey? Frozen in her car by anxiety? Imagine her now, 6 months into practicing emotional agility. The anxiety still shows up sometimes. But now, instead of fighting it or being controlled by it, she notices it. There's anxiety. She makes space for the physical sensations. She diffuses from the catastrophic thoughts. She reminds herself of her values. She wants to be someone who contributes through her work and shows up for her team. She takes a deep breath, acknowledges the discomfort, and walks into the building. The anxiety might still be there, but she's no longer stuck. She's moving. That's emotional agility. Your emotions are not your enemies. They're messengers, delivering information about how your brain is interpreting your situation. Sometimes that information is accurate and helpful. Sometimes it's based on outdated programming and misinterpretations. Either way, you don't have to be controlled by it. You are the sky, and your emotions are the weather. Sometimes sunny, sometimes stormy, always changing. You can learn to hold space for any weather without losing yourself in it, without pretending it's not there, and without letting it determine your direction. The practices you've learned, emotional granularity, cognitive diffusion, acceptance, present moment awareness, self as context, values clarity, and committed action, are tools you'll use for the rest of your life. They're not one-time interventions. They're lifelong skills that deepen with practice. Start where you are. Pick one practice that resonates most and commit to it for a week. Maybe it's checking in with your emotional granularity each evening. Maybe it's using one cognitive diffusion technique whenever you notice an unhelpful thought. Maybe it's identifying your top 3 values and reviewing them each morning. One practice, consistently applied, will begin to shift your relationship with your internal experience. You'll notice changes, moments where you respond rather than react, situations where you stay present instead of getting lost in worry, choices where you honor your values despite discomfort. These small shifts accumulate. 6 months from now, you'll look back and realize you're navigating emotional challenges with more confidence. A year from now, emotional agility will feel less like a technique you're applying and more like how you naturally operate. The journey of emotional agility is one of coming home to yourself, learning to be with whatever arises in your experience while staying connected to what matters most. It's learning that you're bigger than any emotion, more expansive than any thought, and always capable of taking one more values-aligned step. Your emotions will keep flowing, like waves on the ocean. Instead of being tossed around by them or trying to hold them back, you're learning to swim, to move with them, through them, toward the shore of your chosen life. This is your invitation, to feel everything fully while being overwhelmed by nothing. To acknowledge pain without being destroyed by it. to experience joy without clinging to it, to move through life with the fluidity of water, adapting to obstacles, finding your path, flowing toward what matters. You have everything you need. The capacity for emotional agility is already within you. These practices simply help you access and strengthen what's already there. Trust the process. Trust yourself. And keep practicing. Your emotionally agile life is waiting for you. Minimalism. Not someday when everything is perfect, not when all the difficult emotions have disappeared, but right now. In this moment, with whatever you're feeling, the time is now. The person is you. And the path forward is clear. Stay present, stay connected to your values, and keep moving. Welcome to Emotional Agility. Welcome to your most authentic, powerful, resilient self. If this audiobook has opened your eyes to new possibilities in how you relate to your emotions, I want to hear from you. Drop a comment below, sharing your biggest takeaway or the practice you're most excited to try. Are you going to work on emotional granularity? Practice cognitive diffusion? Clarify your values? And if you found this valuable, hit that like button. It helps spread this message to others who need to hear it. Subscribe to the Emberly Audiobook channel so you don't miss future content on personal growth, emotional intelligence, and transforming your life from the inside out. Remember, emotional agility isn't built overnight. It's built in small moments of choice, repeated over days and weeks and months. Check back in with me in the comments in a week or a month and share your progress. I believe in your ability to develop this skill, and I'm honored to be part of your journey. Now go out there and practice moving fluidly through whatever emotions arise today. You've got this.